Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the second Digital Middle Eastern FP&A Board. Today we'll be talking about building winning FP&A teams in the new norm. My name is Hans Gobin, and I am International FP&A Board member, and I will be facilitating this session today. Also joining us later on is Larissa Melnichuk, who is the founder and CEO of Digital FP&A Board and FP&A Trends Group. So let me share with you the agenda for the day. Today we'll be talking about FP&A team roles and skills in the new normal. How do we build synergistic FP&A and cross-cultural teams? How do we adapt FP&A teams to the new normal? Technology. How can we use technology to build winning FP&A teams? FP&A recruitment in the new normal. And we will follow that up with conclusion and recommendations. A quick slide on FP&A Trends Group. So as you all know, we've been around for 7-8 years now. We're now currently in 27 cities in 16 countries and 4 continents. And we do quite a few other things, which you can read in your own time. This slide just shows to us, what are the meetings we've had in the Middle East region over the last few years, face to face. And as you know, this is the second digital meeting we're having. It is now a good time for me to introduce to you the members of the panel for the day. So our first speaker for the day is Matt Poleski, who is Regional CFO, Finance Director at Arthur J.Gallagher. Matt is a Chicago FP&A Board member as well. Matt will today talk to us about FP&A team roles and skills in the new normal. Matt, happy to have us with you.
Happy to be here with you, Hans.
Thank you very much, Matt. Our second speaker for the day is Irina Pavankovic, Vice President, Corporate Controlling and Project Management at Bayer. Irina will be sharing with us her experience as to how she is building synergistic and cross-cultural team within her organization. Hello, Irina. Nice to have you with us.
Hello, pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Our third speaker for the day is João Almeida, CFO, Hubs at A.P Moller Maersk. Amsterdam FP&A Board member. João will be taking us through how he has and is adapting his FP&A teams to the new norm. Hello, João. Nice to have you with us.
Hi, Hans. Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be with you and looking forward to the event. Thank you.
Thank you very much, João. The fourth speaker of the day is Andreas Simon, who's Director EMEA at Jedox. Andreas will today speak to us on technology to build winning FP&A teams. Andreas, nice to have you with us today.
Nice to be here. Thank you very much, Hans. Looking forward to the meeting.
Thank you very much. And the final speaker for the day will be Joe Robinson, who's manager at Michael Page, Middle East. Joe will give us an insight on FP&A teams and skills from a recruiter's perspective. Joe, welcome.
Thanks, Hans. Good to be here.
Excellent. Thank you very much. We've got a great panel of experts and we've got a lot of insight on the subject matter today. So looking forward to your insight. Thank you very much. I would like to invite you to switch off your webcam and go on mute for now, please. So thank you. Now, what is the Digital FP&A Board and the board format? So it is a 90 minutes webinar, as you well know. We've got 4 polls, so please participate and give us your opinion on the subject matter as well. It's an interactive Q&A session. You can ask a question as from now. The chat box is open. You could also network directly with our speakers via LinkedIn. The presentation is available in the handout session, and you can also receive the recording and the presentation after the meeting. Much more importantly, we have a feedback session at the end of the meeting. So as soon as I close the meeting, we would be grateful if you could give us your feedback before you go. It is a good time now to say thank you to our sponsors of the day. Our first sponsor, technology sponsor, is J.Gallagher, provider of smart platform for planning, reporting, and analytics. So thank you, J.Gallagher. Our second sponsor for the day is Michael Page, global recruitment sponsor, one of the world leading professional recruitment consultants. Thank you, Michael Page. Before we start our conversation today, I would like to just quickly remind you of the 5 critical FP&A team roles that the FP&A Board has developed, which started off from Mark Gandy's 3 FP&A critical roles model. The first one is the architect. So what is an architect? An architect understands drivers and data architecture. He builds driver-based models, implement flexible analytical solutions. The second one is the data scientist. What do? A data scientist uses scientific, mathematical, statistical, and machine learning techniques to extract, cleanse, organize, combine, analyze, and present data to help organization in decision making. They are a bridge between data science and finance. Thirdly, the analysts. Analysts interpret results beyond what and why now. They describe, they predict, they prescribe. They lose themselves in scenario analysis, which is very, very important at the moment. The storyteller. The storyteller turns complex into simple, digestible nuggets that any leader can grasp. They are masters of dialogue, very creative, very narrative, improvise on the fly. Ad hoc is very, very easy for them. And finally, they leave us wanting for more. And finally, the influencer. The influencer goes one step beyond the storyteller. They tend to know their target. They create influencing strategy specific to those targets and then go on to influence them. They drive result and decision making. In the end, the trustworthy business partner. So now let us listen to one of our speakers who will give us an insight into how he's using the 5 critical roles into his organization to build a winning FP&A team. So to deliver that, we have Matt Pileski, Northeast Region CFO at Gallagher, who will be telling us about FP&A team skills and roles in the new normal. Matt, the stage is yours. Over to you.
Well, thank you, Hans. What I will talk about today is how we've set up our FP&A team at Gallagher, really to maximize the benefit to the organization. So if you flip to the next slide, Hans. What makes a good FP&A team? I'm starting here with a quote by Malcolm Gladwell. The key to good decision making is not knowledge, it is understanding. We are swimming in the former, we are desperately lacking in the latter. And basically what we found is a lot of times our financial analysts are great at data, but they're not really great at applying it. So we seek to do 3 things. 1, understand the business, then also understand the data, and then finally, apply our understanding of the business with our knowledge of the data. And that's the goal of the team. So if you flip to the next slide, Hans. So if you look at our team, we have about 50 members in our team serving 70 field locations within 10 regions. We have 5 regional CFOs supervising teams of 5 to 7. And a common theme amongst our group is balancing the local field needs of the sales offices with the macro trends we see across the organization. They're really sometimes in conflict with each other, and we need to balance that conflict. So here's how we use the roles. We have analysts. I mean, that's really the core. It's a requirement to play. You got to be an analyst because you got to analyze monthly results. You got to look at our annual budgets and our strategic plans, and you got to be able to analyze the numbers. So everybody has the basic core skill set of analyst. Data scientists, we have data scientists primarily in our central team, and they're the analytical experts who utilize skills in both technology and social science to find trends and manage data. So the field team will leverage the data scientist on the central team. Architect. Now, the architect designs financial reports, and everybody needs to be an architect too, but your influence is going to be different. The central team is going to look at standardized reports, and field teams are doing more custom reports. What's important here is that we design reports to focus on the business's tensions on business drivers that lead to growth. And we stray away from designing reports that really aren't focused on growth and are those immaterial statistics. Influencer. The key to influencing is usually more centered on empathy than it is on knowledge. As Stephen Covey in 7 Habits of Highly Effective People says, seek first to understand, then to be understood. So we have these analysts in the field who spend years developing relationships with the people in the field so they can influence the regional leaders. And the central team is more focused on influencing macro decisions. Storytelling. While empathy is required to understand, you need to have this relationship, you need to be able to tell a story to drive actions. We can tell a branch manager precise metrics. However, often these metrics by themselves are ambiguous and confusing. For example, a recent dilemma we faced is whether to bring back a reduction in staff. The data says we have 2,200 employees. The story, however, is that we used to have 2,300 employees, we're down 100, and that loss in 100 people is affecting our customer retention ratio. So being able to apply metrics and put them in a story is key. If you can go to the next slide, Hans. Okay. Now let's talk about this crazy year 2020 and how things have been different and how we've applied what we have been talking about. So last year, same as all years, we finished 2019. It was a great year, and we spent 4 months doing a very precise budget with very detailed analysis, very heavy negotiation, and then you come to March, and then all of a sudden we're sent home from work. We begin working at home, and we got to do a brand new budget. We don't know what the impacts of COVID are going to be. Well, our data scientists on the central team began breaking down our entire business using standard industry classification codes that account for all our revenue by industry. We categorize the SIC codes into 3 buckets: high impact, medium impact, low impact. And then our storytellers turn the data work into a story. Although our budget had required 5% growth, now we're looking at maybe a -5, and additional cost controls are going to be necessary to save cash. So this is what happens on the central team. Then out in the regions, the regional leaders are figuring out, well, how do I enact these cost controls? And they need to know their local numbers. So the field analysts are reforecasting their local resorts and really giving those local leaders command over their numbers. So as they get this divisional direction, they know how to execute it. They know how to pull the right levers. And then they report back to the central analyst team who basically combines all the information together so we can tell divisional management, here's where we're at in terms of accomplishing divisional goals. So the network really works well in a crisis year. But as we made our way into July, we realized, well, the economic impact, we probably were conservative, and we were saying, hey, it's going to be -5. Well, it's not that bad. Maybe it's going to be closer to flat. So we took our forecast up, and then we had to loosen up some of the cost controls as competitors actually started stealing some of our key employees. The central team and the field team continue to make sure we have command of our key metrics, particularly really understanding year-over-year revenue growth, new business percentage, and lost business percentage. Then as we get into September and October, now we have the challenge of doing the 2021 budget. So how are things different in a COVID environment doing the budget this year versus last year? I mean, the first thing is there's just so much more uncertainty due to COVID. So we know, look, it's not about hitting a precise number. It's about really knowing your numbers. And two, we've got about 5 points of operational efficiencies that are due to cost controls. We got to assess, are these temporary savings or permanent savings? When do they come back? How do we react? As we know, that at least in the U.S. here, the virus is still surging and people are pretty much shut down. So our regional teams are really focused in this budget process and how do we grow the business? What are the regional growth strategies? How are we creating centers of excellence that give us competitive advantage and really drive economies of scale? Whereas the central team is more focused on macro trends and levers such as cost savings from automation. You know, can we reduce rent? Like, what are things that we can do to drive rent savings? Okay. So here's the next slide. So all of this would not be possible without the use of technology. So, you know, March 2020, we began working from home. The directive now is I'll be at home until April, but we're still working without missing a beat because we can use technology to really get us what we need. The most important is the common platform, and you just see it. Like sometimes when we do our analysis, we do it in Excel, and then the time it takes to add up Excel together, you spend more time combining the data than you do analyzing it. When we can put analysis into a common platform and then it can be queried instantaneously by a central team, it just makes it so when we're reviewing, we're not saying, what is it? We're saying, well, we expected it to be X. Why is it Y? Help us understand. Again, it's really understanding the business as opposed to reconciling numbers. And we couldn't do that without technology. Web conferencing and screen sharing, we found that sometimes it's even more efficient if I can be pulling up a document on the screen and people can be editing it as we go, and then we can do camera sharing so we can see each other. We've really, I think, are using web conferencing better than we ever have in the past. And finally, I found paperless. Like I used to print out a ton of paper, we'd make binders, and now that I'm at home, I find myself printing a lot less. We're just becoming more efficient as we go paperless. Next slide on. So FP&A roles and conflict. All healthy organizations have conflict. And again, you'll see the theme of conflict with us is people in the field have different priorities than people on a central team. They just have different metrics to hit, different ratios. So there's always some conflict. And so let's go through the different roles, and the analysts can have their data used against them. For example, we often fire how much raise money we can afford. The analyst needs to partner with the influence in the story to know when to show, well, things in dollars versus when to show in percentages. How you present the data really makes a big difference. And same thing with the data scientist. The data scientist has access to volumes and volumes of data. They need to architect with the architect and the storyteller to show what's relevant in a way that'll drive action. The architect may be encouraged to design reports to focus on things that are not business drivers. The architect needs to make sure they're partnering with the analyst and the storyteller to make sure the report focuses on the business drivers. The influencer is frustrated when they can't get the attention of the business. Like they know what needs to be influenced, they can't do it. So they need to partner with the storyteller to present their influence in a way that will drive action. And the storyteller needs to partner with the analyst and the influencer to make sure they're giving the right story. Like, sometimes talk about a fact-free zone or like you're not telling the right stories. We need to make sure the stories are matching up with the facts. Okay, next page. I guess our key takeaway here is how you set up your FP&A team and balance really the roles. That is critical and having a successful team. You really need to balance all 5: analyst, data scientist, architecture, influence, storyteller, in a way that is receptive to your organization. Thank you.
Matt, thank you. Thank you very much for the great insight here. It's great how you describe, how you're using the team, and especially all these 5 key skills that we've, outlined. I outlined in the very beginning, how you manage and how you're making the difference between local and central team as well, and how you put that into perspective in terms of what the budget looked like last year, what is the forecast looking like this year, and how you're moving that forward. And finally, the conflicting piece that you gave us an insight into the organization is really, really valuable. So absolutely, thank you very much for that. I would like to ask Irina to come and give us her opinion on what she's seen in the subject matter, please. So Irina.
I fully agree with what Matt highlighted, that there is a great need to have the balance between the 5 FP&A roles outlined, and having the right synergy, the collaboration, and the right technology to support that speed in developing the insights and making those decisions quickly. Matt also highlighted the need for a faster scenario planning, especially when the business is in crisis, and as we see it now during this COVID pandemic. And I can only empathize in that sense that we've seen the same in our organization at the onset of the crisis, where there was a greater need to speed up that scenario planning and the decision making. And so, in my opinion, when I think about the future of the FP&A, it's really in how quickly we're able to steer those decisions through a better analysis, anticipating scenarios and planning, and also increasing the weight on how much we look forward into the future versus looking back into the past.
Irina, thank you very much for your insight. Thank you very much. Andreas, would you like to give us your takeaway on Matt's presentation, please?
Of course. Very, very, very great presentation, Matt. Thank you very much. I think the first stone, what we here see, or the first step, what we here see, how important technology and having a common platform is. Not only what we have done in the past, just calculating numbers and make sure everything is right. It's also about decentralized planning, faster scenarios, and supporting the different roles in the FP&A team, which makes sure where you have to make sure that we have the right platform in place to do that, or you have the right integration of platforms in place to do that. So thank you very much, Matt.
Andreas, thank you very much. I think what we're seeing here is obviously, as the panel is so geographically spread, we're seeing different views from Andreas, who's based out in the Middle East, and then Matt, who's in Chicago, as well as Irina's perspective, who's based out in Toronto. So guys, thank you very much for that. Matt, thank you very much for your insight on FP&A teams and skills. I think now it's a great time for us to move and ask the attendees, what do they think is more important as far as role is concerned? So I will now launch our first poll of the day, which I have just done. And our first poll of the day is around what role do you think is most important FP&A role for the future of your organization? So please, if you guys can give us your opinion on that, that will be fantastic. Very quickly, we've got 25-30% people voted. I'll give it another 10 seconds or so. So is it the architect? Is it the data scientist? Is it the analyst? Is it the storyteller? Or is it the influencer? I am now going to close the poll. And I will now share the results of the poll. So 11% have said the architect, 9% the data scientist, 17% the analyst, 15% the storyteller, 47% the influencer. So Matt, would you like to give us your opinion on what we're seeing here, please?
Yeah, I think, look, the influencer is clearly thought to be the most important. And I think the reason is, like, look, you can do all this work, but if people don't use it, it's not relevant. So the influencer is showing, hey, it's very important. But the other aspects are key too, because the influencer needs to be influencing with good data. So very interesting results.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Matt. Irina, your point of view, please.
A little bit surprising to see the split of the results. I agree, influencing is definitely top of the line, but enabled by all these roles. I think storytelling is really critical in being able to influence that decision making at the end. I mean, especially now as number crunching, data generation is slowly being replaced by machines. It's what we do with the numbers that really matters and ultimately brings the value. So how we tell that compelling story and ultimately influence the decision is an essential skill for the FP&A professionals of the future. And there's this Native American proverb that says, those who tell the stories rule the world. So there is something to be said by that.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Irina, and thank you very much, Matt. I'm now going to hide the poll, and then we will move into our next session. So our next topic of discussion is building synergistic and cross-cultural team. We know that 1 + 1 is 2, but obviously we're talking about synergy here, so 3. If we get the best people in FP&A together in a team, there can be positive synergy, absolutely, which is what everybody's working towards, but there can also be very negative synergy. I always like to give this example of this football team where you buy all these best players in the world, bring them together, and guess what? For the next 5 years, you still don't win the league. So yeah, that's a good example of negative synergy. So Irina, VP of Corporate Controlling and Project Management at Bayer, I would like to invite you to give us your point of view as to how you're doing that within your organization. Irina, over to you.
Thank you, Hans. As Hans mentioned, I come from Bayer, which operates across the globe in areas of prescription over-the-counter medicines and agricultural science. And I am leading the activities, FP&A and controlling activities in Canada, and I'm really happy to have the opportunity to share with you some of my perspective and experiences on building synergistic and cross-cultural FP&A teams. So let me start with a quote. So Hans, next slide. From legendary Henry Ford, he said, "Coming together is a beginning, keeping together is progress, and working together is success." We may all have individuals on our FP&A teams or in our departments, but it's not necessarily what makes them a team. It's when they realize that they are part of something bigger than just themselves, where true collaboration and synergies are ultimately realized. Next slide, Hans. So how do you achieve and sustain a synergy in the environment and under circumstances that are constantly changing? There is so much uncertainty, ambiguity every day around us, and influenced by ever-changing external factors. So right now, we have so much more movement to a remote workplace, for example. New technologies for operations, collaborations every day, changing market and consumer demands. And all of this is forcing industries all over the world to examine their organizational setups, streamline their processes, adopt new technologies at much greater speed to speed up that insight and decision-making process. So What did we do at Bayer and with our FP&A teams to adapt to this changing environment and the way we work? Next slide, Hans. So we also changed our organizational setup to fit the new changing environment. We have also streamlined certain processes and eliminated some altogether, and recently implemented a system that is integrated in terms of reporting and planning with aspects of predictive analytics and also self-service based components for our stakeholders. We adjusted our team setup, as you can see here. At the beginning of the year, we went from one country controlling FP&A team to multiple teams that are dedicated now to different divisions, with now different reporting lines to various regional and global headquarters. And we also established extended FP&A teams in shared service centers across the globe. So now we have multiple teams that are all contributing to FP&A processes from different parts of the world. And so that means that in order to ensure the speed, the agility, the synergy, that functional alignment is of so much greater importance now than the organizational reporting lines or the structure. And this also highlights the fact that we are now in this global operating model, which requires us to have that greater understanding of the cultures across the globe and to be able to better align on those common objectives. Now, in the past, I have to say that was a challenge, at least in our environment. I recall the times when we would get the direction from our headquarters with little opportunity for dialogue or input. Now this is different with the technology that we have. We have the video and other aspects or ways to connect and see the person on the other side, get to know them, understand what matters to them, and be better able to align on the common objectives. Next slide, Hans. So as I mentioned, we are now in the setup of decentralized FP&A teams, but we continue to see great importance to maintain the synergies and also connect at a social level too, as a component of that synergy. And so what we've done at the beginning of the year, we did bring our community together virtually to align on the approach to ensure that that synergy remains there. And so we set up a 3 pillars to help us do that. And first, we aligned on common goals. As different departments, we do have different priorities, but we have certain operational goals that unite us all. And one big one was to transform our organization or function at the beginning of the year. So bringing everyone along, explaining why, how, what is happening early on was really key to ensure that synergy engagement stays intact. Establishing and maintaining good channels of collaboration also is another critical pillar. So some of the new things that we've done this year, definitely experimented and explored new tools that became available to us. So now, for example, we're doing far more file sharing to collaborate on the same documents versus exchanging emails back and forth. We're using Microsoft Teams, for example, to share documents, information on projects, initiatives we work on together, and also established a social channel on Yammer that's similar to Facebook or Twitter, where the community has the opportunity to share social anecdotes, but also some key business information in much shorter time, which replaces the need for emails or meetings that no one can afford to attend. And lastly, but not least, is the importance of increasing our skills and competency in the areas of managing ambiguity, courage to challenge status quo, better storytelling that we see as the future of the FP&A as we enter the digital age. So as I said, we have the framework. Now, if we go to the next slide, Hans, I have to say there are, bumps and watchouts along the road. The journey continues. So there are certain things that we, have outlined that we mitigate in different ways. For example, the workload and the resources are reducing at different speeds. So we have to ensure we have the mindset that is focused on, what are the value drivers, what is really important, and taking risks to implement new things quickly when they're not perfect, 80% of the way perhaps, just to ensure that that synergy is realized sooner, and the rest we tweak along the way. And technology, we know, doesn't always work and meet our expectations. So with that, it's certainly important to have a good reach into a global FP&A community and have that understanding that enable us to share best practices and also contribute with our solution that benefits the greater community. And lastly, the COVID that has impact on all of us around the globe, and the greater focus on the values that we have to drive for our business. But we also need to do that or enable that through social engagement. And so we realize how important it is to connect and build that synergy at a personal level too. Some of the things that we've done, for example, we established the Team Tea Tuesdays on a weekly basis where we connect to check in on each other and also see what are some of the hot topics challenges that we can help each other out with. Simple 20-minute breaks, for example, to play a game using Microsoft Whiteboard, and also taking time to acknowledge the success. And now for the year end, we are planning an event to do exactly that, and also give back to the community through our annual toy drive, for example. So those are some of the things that we are doing to ensure that that synergy is there for the FP&A teams across the country and the globe. And some of the success factors that we've noted so far that I can highlight, and if we go to the next slide, Hans, they are to align and focus on common goals first and foremost, established and maintain collaboration channels that are effective for your teams, and certainly invest the time to develop and grow yourself and your teams in the skills that will be required for the new normal that's ahead of us. Also foster the mindset and common language. And last but not least, the glue to synergy is also to have some fun. And that will better enable us to face the challenges that lie ahead. So with that, Hans, I turn it over to you. Thank you.
Irina, thank you very much for a great presentation, and thank you for taking us through that journey that you guys have been going. But more importantly, giving us live examples of how you did things, and I like the way the celebration. It's not about bringing great people together, but it's how you carry on motivating them through instances where people are working from home, people aren't seeing each other, etc. So spot on there. Thank you very much for that. I would like to invite Matt to give us his takeaways on Irina's presentation, please. Matt, so your quick comment, please.
Yeah, I think what I really like is the way across cultures, Irina is doing team building exercises to really reunite people and give them a common vision. I think those team building things, sometimes we forget about those as financial analysts, but they're really important. So great presentation, Irina.
Thank you, Matt. Irina, we seem to have lost your webcam there, so if you could come back on, that'd be great. Second person I'd like to invite is Jiao, please. So Jiao, could you give us your point of view on Irina's presentation? Thank you.
Sure, Hans, and I'd like to echo what yourself and Matt said. It was a great presentation, Irina. What was very insightful and actually refreshing to hear in terms of the experience you had in Bayer is the knock-on impact that COVID-19 has had in all organizations. We've actually become a lot more connected in the globe through this crisis. And it was very, very important to see, and I'd echo that as well, the common cultural vein and common cultural theme that underlied your story at your company, because it is about people and building strong people and keeping teams connected. So very insightful. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Irina. Thank you, Matt, for your great insight. I think it is now a good time that we move on and see what the audience and the board members think around the second poll of the day, which is around synergy and their thoughts. So I'm just about to launch the second poll of the day, which is around the biggest barrier to team synergy in your organization. Internal competitiveness, different mindset, poor listening and communication skills, knowledge deficits, and a lack of alignment around goals. If you could give us your vote and your opinion as to what is happening within your organization and your personal feeling, that will be a very, very good. Thank you. I can see 40% of people have voted. I'll give it another 10 seconds or so, and then I will close the poll. I will now close the poll. Thank you very much for voting, and I would like to just share the answers. So we've got 12% because of internal competitiveness, 26% because of different mindset, 8% because of poor listening and communication skills, 20% knowledge deficit, and 34% because of lack of alignment and goals. Irina, can we have some comments from yourself as to what we're seeing here, please?
I am glad that the poll aligns with exactly the two that have the highest percentage is the two that I would highlight from my perspective as well, and that is the mindset and the goal alignment. And I believe that any success starts with the right mindset, the mindset of growth, the can-do attitude. And not everyone in the organization may have the growth mindset, especially in the times when there is a significant transformation or crisis. And in that environment, people may not have the ability to see the bigger picture, their purpose, and how they fit into the vision overall. And this then also poses the hurdle in achieving that goal alignment, which is then amplified by competing priorities and also decentralized lines of accountability or reporting.
Thank you very
so
much.
I'm glad to see it's aligned. Yeah.
Thank you for that insight, Irina. Jiao, any comments from yourself, please?
Yes, so I'm a bit surprised on the communication skills polling on that, because from experience, I do know that when one goes through a lot of change and transformation, that the common complaint is that leadership organizations are not effectively and continuously communicating on overall goals. I would also echo at least the other one around the lack of alignment around goals. What we have seen in our organization and the industry is with the COVID-19 and the impacts of it, that organizations have been very short-term in focus, and part of the organization struggles with the lack of the longer vision and the longer view on where the organization is going. But I'd echo basically the results. Huh?
Thank you very much, Jiao. Thank you very much, Irina. I will now hide the poll, and it's a good time to move on to our next session, which will be delivered by Jiao. Nicely, you are on the webcam already, and Jiao is CFO at CFO Hubs at A.P Moller Maersk. And today, Jiao is going to give us his point of view as to how he's adapting FP&A teams in the new normal within A.P Moller Maersk. So Zhao, over to you, whenever you're ready. Thank you.
Thank you, Hans. So a huge thank you to the FP&A Board for giving me this opportunity to share my experiences and insights on adapting high-performance teams to changing environments. Just as an information, my present CFO responsibilities at A.P Moller Maersk, the global leader in container transport and logistics, span Asia, Middle East, Africa, and Europe. My passion lies in leading high-performance teams in international organizations that partner with the business to develop innovative solutions to support strategic and business transformations. And just as a final note, I'd like to stress that the views I'll share today are my own and do not reflect those of the organization that I work for. Second slide, please, Hans. So apart from my strong connections to South Africa, I've always admired and been inspired by the vision, leadership, and guidance of Nelson Mandela, which all of you will know. How true and relevant one of his most powerful quotes remain to today's times of unprecedented uncertainties presented by the pandemic of COVID-19, where we seek visionary and transformational leadership. At the very center of Nelson Mandela's leadership was the very essence of continuous learning and personal development as key enablers to high-performance teams, including FP&A teams, which we'll detail a bit later in my presentation. Next slide, please. So years ago, I had the privilege of planning, building, and running a new divisional organizational structure at a big organization called Royal Numico, which at the time was the European market leader in nutrition and consumer healthcare, which was then ultimately acquired by Danone. Building FP&A capability back in the late 90s required strong leadership support, which viewed the finance function at the time as serving, backward-looking and historical governance, and focused on financial stewardship, which fortunately we was enabled, through an aligned roadmap with the division's vision and the overall group strategy at the time. Importantly, the roadmap we put together was signed off, and that was important, by key business stakeholders, clearly articulating the end state, key to capturing the organization's hearts and minds, which are fundamental in large change and transformation. We also included a detailed capability assessment that was performed through an external advisory firm, and that facilitated us to successfully navigate the various change and maturity phases of building high-performance teams. In times of uncertainty and constant change, having the necessary skills of business partnering and analysis, forward analysis, which I'll share a more recent leading example on my next slide, will support leadership in building high-performance organizations. Next slide, please. So technology and business partnering are key enablers to innovation, to disruption, and to building high-performance teams. The finance leadership at A.P Moller Maersk identified a few years ago the need to accelerate business finances development, given the gap in business understanding and perceived lack of value creation of finance to the business at the time. So the group put together a business finance college that was set up in the then shipping division, and actually it's been rolled out to the terminals division where I'm involved in. And a finance business partner framework was designed, which also included rolling out training programs to accelerate the business finance transformation. The Maersk Finance Business Partner Framework was structured at the time, and it's still true today, to position finance to drive value creation as a trusted partner to the business. So the elements of the framework comprised the why. So do we have a business partner role? Where? And where does the finance focus to create value? What? So what activities does business finance perform, and the how? So does finance deploy competencies to create value? The program has represented a significant investment to the group, but clearly demonstrated an increasing expectation from the key stakeholders in having finance business partners supporting the business in solving critical business challenges. Closely linked to strong capability is the essential enablers of technology, process, and data management that I put up on the slide. Next slide, please, Hans. So as you may know, the International FP&A Board has developed an analytics maturity model, which is up on my on the slide, which is, I will not go into the detail of the model, but from first-hand experience and previous experiences in different industries, it's fundamentally important that organizations realize that not one size fits all realities. However, you do have to realize that when maturing a high-performance team or driving significant change or transformation initiatives, leadership needs to be patient and diligently progress through each phase while building a learning and development muscle. As John Chambers, the ex-CEO of Cisco, once said, if you don't innovate fast, disrupt your industry, disrupt yourself, you'll be left behind. So we're currently maturing a lean journey at the terminals division at A.P Moller Maersk, which is an excellent transferable example of a learning platform covering all staff, from frontline stevedores to finance, including FP&A. Problem solving is at the core of our incremental learning and improvement, and having a solid foundation to progress through the normal phases of developing, intermediate, and leading states that the FP&A framework shows. Next slide, please. In times of constant and deep change, so how does FP&A function remain relevant and resilient? How does FP&A continue to support innovation through agility and differentiation? From personal experience, having navigated through large, both business and digital transformations, finance leadership look to the FP&A function to partner and support critical board decision-making and business challenges, building high-performance teams through increased digitization of our ways of working, continuous learning and development of our people as we prepare our organizations to be even stronger post-COVID-19 times, will remain vital and essential to high-performance FP&A teams. So just as an ending note, so please consider the following key elements to adapting to constant change in a new normal. Stay relevant, learn from your and others' experiences, both positive and negative. Keep a continuous learning mindset, be open to change, and lead with a vision and passion. And a huge with a huge word of appreciation to all those who took the time to spend their valuable time to attend this webinar. Hopefully the insights I've shared with you and the reflections I've shared with you will nudge you a bit closer to building your high-performance FP&A teams. So success. Over to you, Hans.
Joe, thank you very much for a great piece of insight from how you've built team before, how you carry on building team, to how you sustain those teams, and for sharing with us lastly as your key conclusion your mantras for keeping building that successful FP&A team. So thank you very much for that. Just before we ask Irina and Andreas for some comment, I'd just like to remind the webinar attendees that the chat box is open, so please post your question to any of the presenters and address them to them, please. So thank you very much. Irina, your quick comment, please, on Zhao's presentation, your key takeaway. Thank you.
Zhao, thank you for the great presentation and for highlighting the increased importance of business partnering and also integrated planning and collaboration enabled by the right technology, right, to ensure that we stay relevant and we're able to contribute to that decision making in the FP&A profession. And I can only echo what you've shared as examples, and for what is happening in our organization, where we're seeing that by implementing integrated processes and planning systems, it's leading to reduction of activities and level of resources required in certain FP&A roles, but at the same time opening additional capacities for greater business partnering focus. And I agree that we need to ensure that we continue to build those skills in predictive analytics, scenario planning, now even AI, and that digital fitness overall, to ensure that we continue to add value and stay relevant.
Thank you, Irina. Thank you. Andres, your quick comment, please.
Yeah, thank you, Hans. Thank you, Joao, for the presentation. That's the third topic, which we have to support via technology. That is exactly the business partnering already mentioned by Irina, a topic which came up in the last years, and it's now very important in winning FP&A teams, especially across the organizations. And what I also like is the combination that technology is not everything. So you need to have the right people with the right mindset, because the combination of people, of technology, and clever processes is that what brings a digital FP&A success. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Andreas, Irina, and thank you very much, Xiao, for a great presentation. It is now a good time for us to ask the attendees as to what they think is the biggest remote work challenge, to get their opinion on that. I'm just going to launch our the third poll of the day, which is, what is the biggest remote work challenge, do you think? Working too much, prioritizing your work, interruptions, loneliness and lack of human interaction, communication issues, and being out of the loop. Can you please vote? I will, we've got 40% voted. I will give it a few more minutes. Sorry, a few more seconds, and then I'll close the poll. I am now going to close the poll. Thank you very much, everyone, for voting, and I will share the results, which are 12% think it's working too much, 6% prioritizing their work, 6% interruption, 35% around loneliness and lack of human interaction, and 41% on communication issues and being out of the loop. Xiao, would you like to give us your point of view, please, on the results?
Sure. Yeah. So what we've seen in our organization is actually the social aspect and the socialization, and that's impacting a bit of the morale and the engagement in our organization. We've actually seen some good examples of teams throughout the organization actually adapting a virtual coffee meeting once a week, where basically no business is talked, and it's basically a virtual setup of sharing a coffee moment, which partly replaces the actual coffee sessions we had before, which is so important to the socializing and the interaction with people. I'm a bit surprised on the communication piece, but yeah, those are my comments. Thanks, Hans.
Thank you very much. And Andres, your comments, please.
I completely agree with some of the numbers here. Loneliness and lack of human interaction is also the biggest topic in the companies I'm talking to. And a lot of companies are setting up not only the virtual coffees, but also other events which they are doing remotely, from cake baking to cocktail mixing to others, to overcome this kind of topic. But that is, I would say, also the biggest remote work challenge.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, members of the panel, for your insight. I will now hide this, and we will now move on to our next session, which is around technology. So how can technology help us build award-winning FP&A teams? Systems have to be collaborative and have to be time-saving. So how is FP&A culture changing? And how is technology helping us to add value? So now, to talk to us about this, we have the pleasure to re-invite Andres Simon, Director EMEA at Jedox, to talk about this. So, Andreas, the floor is yours. Please take it away.
Thank you very much, Hans. We are going directly to my first slide. 25 years I'm now in the area of enterprise performance management, trying to automate budgeting, planning, and forecast. And the first picture, what I would like to show is exactly what it's about when 86% of all companies are still using Excel as the foundation of their planning processes, which is a shocking 86% of all companies, which were over 90% when I started my journey 25 years ago. And the reason why you don't see a team here, it's because the reality of collaboration is there is no collaboration. Only because you have Excel in the organization and everybody understands it doesn't mean that you can collaborate and that you're creating a winning FP&A team. Going over to the next slide, we will see that the main activities also in the past, what people are spending in an FP&A teams is data collection, data validation. So more than 45%, almost 50% of your time is used for manual work, and the insight generation and driving actions is a very low percentage, about 25%. That also comes back to the use of technology. What kind of technology you're using, because actually not integrated systems. When we're going to the next slide, we will see that, next slide, please. So when we go to the next slide, then we also see how complicated it is on the left side to run a whole FP&A team via a software like Excel, because load initial data, distributing sheets via email, going back and forth, no monitoring the progress, no workflow management, and manual consolidating all the results, etc., is really a pain. So what people are using, or what the first thing what we're doing the first 10 years of my journey was how to integrate enterprise performance management into these kind of workflows, how to automate that, make sure that they are web used, to make sure there are workflow components included for approve and reject workflows, that the consolidation of data happening automatically, so that the online scenarios and analysis and the reporting of the data, which gives you much more time, and the value creation is much more happening. Next slide, please. So that was the first 10 years. We are focusing only on automation of the process, away from descriptive reporting over to the automation. What's happening now, and we talked about that already in the presentation from Joao, is collaborative planning. Because what's now happening is that planning is not only anymore the task of the Office of Finance. We want to be the strategic advisor for all the departments around the Office of Finance. We want to help marketing, HR, operations, sales. We want to create operational planning. But what technology has to deliver now, instead of only automation, is a kind of flexibility that you can build all these kind of applications around the Office of Finance, and you can integrate that into an integrated financial planning and analytics application. Next slide, please. So that means technology must be more flexible, and there are solutions out of the market who are supporting you that cannot only be used in the Office of Finance. You can create operational planning for it. You can create sales planning, integrated with CRM systems, etc. So helping you creating that business partnering. Next step was that we have now not only the traditional, though there was a paradigm shift from traditional to digital. Now we also want to have automatic forecast creation, because we need to be faster in the new normal. Since March, we know why, because everything what we planned for in September last year or in October was completely irrelevant from one moment to the other. So we need to be faster. We need to create forecast. We need to use other technologies like AI, like machine learning, like RPA, for example, as a path into the digital financial planning and analytics age. I think next slide, please. So another point for technology. So the overall modern enterprise performance management looks like, so we need to have predictive and AI, or not only time series. We also need to have machine learning. We need to have driver-based predictions as well. Everything at the moment in memory. We are going more and more into cloud to make sure that we are mobile and everywhere available, and all these systems are working together, and that EPM is across the business and not only in the Office of Finance, to enable collaboration and access to the system from anywhere. Can you, next slide please, sorry. So the technology to support collaboration and culture change in a winning FP&A team, make sure that you are supporting decentralized planning across multi-regional FP&A teams, what we did in the past. So that was the first step, what we did 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. So we are integrating Excel into an enterprise performance management system, not anymore a single user system. We want to automate the process. The next step, we need technology to enable the business partnering, to support departments outside of the Office of Finance. And we also heard that today in the presentation from Matt, different roles in your FP&A teams. We have storytellers, we have analysts. All these roles in an FP&A team need to be supported with the respective technology. You need to be able to create the stories and to show that, to visualize your data. Hopefully everything integrated into one platform, or different tools which we are completely integrated into each other, and that is a hassle anymore. The fourth thing now, since March, we have to have now local FP&A teams. People are not coming into the office anymore. So what happens in the office when you talk to each other need to be supported now from the home. So people need to work from home and need to collaborate for that, and the technology need to support that. Yeah, it's not only the decentralized planning, now even the local FP&A teams cannot work together anymore into one office. And helping the whole team in the digital transformation and the culture change in the FP&A team, because when you go to the next slide, please, there's a big culture change from what we called in the past the bean counter, and which is a strategist, because what was providing service like management reporting, budgeting, forecast, and planning is very important. But the modern view, that what people would like to have for the future and for more and better guidance, is to be the strategist, supporting the business with analysts for operational decisions and translating corporate strategy into business level financial plans. And that is everything what the technology support for. And the platforms you have on the market at the moment needed to be transformed from the old way of thinking, just automating your Excel sheets and your way you're working, into that modern FP&A, digital FP&A role. But there are technologies out of the market. Please select wisely. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Andreas, for a great presentation. I like the way you started off with, talking about Excel there, which is amazingly 20 or so years down the line, it was 90% and it's still 86%. So, let's look at it as an opportunity. But then you went on to talk about all the different technologies we have at our hand, and how we can use it to kind of build winning FP&A teams, and how the culture has changed for the better, very definitely, and how we can add value these days compared to what we used to do 20 or so years ago. So thank you very much for that. I would like to ask Irina for her comment on this slide, please. So Irina, if you were there, please, can you add your key takeaway on Andreas' slide? Irina, are you there? You might be on mute.
Yes.
There we go.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I think we've talked about it throughout the session today, about how much the role of FP&A is changing, and how much of it is truly now relying on having that right technology to enable us in doing that job of the future. And so, I echo everything of what Andreas has said, that role from traditional, being counter is completely being revolutionized, and now is turning into a role that is driving the strategy, sitting at the table, and having a much bigger voice than perhaps we have been used to having in the past. Yeah, and so it is something that is pivoting now, and we have to ensure that we have the right skills and the right technologies to enable us.
Thank you, Irina. Very spot on there. Thank you. Jiao, your key takeaway of Andrea's presentation, please.
Thank you very much, Andreas. A very good presentation. What struck me was I wasn't surprised because I've seen that elsewhere, the amount of non-value time that's spent by organizations across the world on non-value activities. I mean, technology, there's a lot of solutions out there. There's enough solutions for all organizations. It's really pivoting to the balance of the technology, to the data, to the capability, and to the people. So, yeah, spot on.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Irina, and Andreas. Thank you very much for a great presentation. I think it is a good time now that we hear from our attendees as to how is technology affecting them, and whether or not they use collaborative technology. So I'm now going to launch our last poll for the day, which is around, do you currently use modern collaborative technology for FP&A? The first answer is yes, we do. The second one, no, we do not, but we plan to do and implement something in the future. And final answer is no, we do not, and we do not plan to implement anything collaborative for FP&A. So if you could vote, please, that would be great. We've got quite a lot of participants already. I can see 60–75%. So I'll give it another 5 seconds, and I will now close the poll. Thank you very much for voting, and I will share the poll. So 34% said yes, we do have collaborative technology. Great. 53% is saying we don't, but we will implement some in the future. So that takes us to almost 90%, 87% to be precise, and 13% say no, we do not plan to implement anything. So a bit of an opportunity there. Andreas, what are your thoughts on this?
That is better than the ratio we had on my first slide. So here we have 66% of all the people who are not having a modern collaborative technology at the moment for FP&A, and 34% already have one. But still, the number is very big, so a lot to do to create this or to support the winning FP&A teams with the right technology.
Thank you very much. And Irina, what are your thoughts on this, Irina?
It is good to see that majority, or more than 50%, are on their way to implement new modern collaborative technology. Certainly, what we have seen in our organization, just by having some new tools implemented at the beginning of the year, how much more of collaboration we are seeing across the teams. And of course, in the crisis that we're in, it was of tremendous importance to ensure that that continuity of the business is there. And so, again, having the collaborative technology in place increases, not just collaboration, but productivity, the business results that ultimately we're trying to drive and achieve.
Thank you very much, Irina. Thank you very much for that, members of the panel. I would like to remind everybody to please post a question before, and now we go on to our last presenter of the day. Joe is manager at Michael Page, and he will be giving us his point of view, or recruiter's point of view, of what is changing in terms of recruitment in the new normal. So Joe, over to yourself. Ready?
Thank you, Hans. That's great. So I selected a quote here from Steve Jobs. The quote is that the most powerful person in the world is the storyteller. The storyteller sets the vision, values, and the agenda of everything that follows. The reason I've selected that quote is because it obviously represents one of the FP&A roles which we've already discussed so far this evening, Storyteller. And Hans, if you could take us to the next slide, please. The reason that I have chosen it is because it's probably the single biggest skill that our clients are asking for. So it's interesting that the first poll didn't necessarily reflect that. But what we're finding at the moment is that for our clients, realistically, a solid base of technical skills are a given. But what they're looking for is for us to find people for them who can take that technical skill, turn it into something that the whole business can take advantage of. In the same theme, eloquence is absolutely crucial, because as FP&A continues to take a more leading role in larger organizations, our clients are looking for people who can tell that story just as well to the CEO as they do to junior staff in all kinds of different departments and across the organization. Interestingly, we're hearing a lot of interest at the moment about modeling skills. There's a lot of demand for that. And overall, I would say clients are being incredibly demanding. So as much as I've said that the base level of skills is a given, we're getting asked for a lot more specific technical skill now than we perhaps have been in the past. So those people still do need to be very, very strong communicators. Largely, our clients are differentiated by ambition. So in some positions, and some of you may find this in your businesses, it's not necessarily relevant to have someone who might want to be a CEO if the position you're moving them into isn't going to put them on that career path. And we're getting more and more clients now thinking about that as they begin to make their hiring decisions. So Hans, if you could take us to the next slide. So I spoke with a large group of some of the clients that I've done the most business with here, and there was some interesting feedback from them. So something that's very positive for all of you is that 100% of them agreed that FP&A is more important now than it was 5 years ago, and that it will continue to become more important over the next 5 years. 66% of those clients said that they intend to invest in their FP&A function, either with new technology and tools or with additional headcount in the next 2 years. 83% actually said that if they had to choose, they would rather have an expert communicator than someone who was a specialist in their industry. Probably the most surprising of these statistics, actually, even though it's the lowest percentage, 42% said that they would prefer to hire FP&A staff with a diverse range of industry experience as opposed to someone who was a specialist in their sector. So hopefully that's good news for those of you who are job hunting at the moment. And next slide. So just a few tips here for those of you who are job hunting. As we said, there was a clear trend on the previous slide that while technical skills are more important than ever, the softer skills, such as the ability to interact with colleagues from around the business and in different departments, in different areas, think strategically, ask challenging questions, all of these things are more important. So my tips for you, balance your technical skills versus your softer skills. Think about which of those different FP&A characters we've discussed you are: analyst, architect, storyteller. Judge this on the role that you're applying to. If you're going for an analyst position, clearly the technical skills are absolutely vital. So you talk about your modeling experience, systems that you're proficient with. But if you're going for a head of FP&A role, then your technical ability should be a given. And what you need to demonstrate is your achievements and your leadership skills. So play to your strengths. What I mean by this is that if your entire career has been spent in heavy goods manufacturing, for example, it's very unlikely that your next job is going to be in a fintech company. But having said that, if you've worked across multiple sectors, then you might find it easier to make transitions again in future. If you're an expert in one sector, continue to target that sector or something very similar. If you have multiple sectors on your CV, make sure that you list them all, but specifically that you talk about what you learned while working in each of those sectors, how you've applied that to your other roles. Next up, finance business partner is not just one position anymore. If you're a senior FP&A professional, you have to be able to work as an effective business partner and communicate effectively with stakeholders across the business. And lastly, how have you made a difference? So as an FP&A professional, you have a tremendous opportunity to have a real tangible impact on your business, probably more so than almost anyone else. You need to be able to demonstrate what you've done, why you did it, what difference it made to the outcome, and perhaps just as importantly, what is it that you're going to do next? That's it from me.
Thank you very much, Joe. Great insight. Thank you for sharing with us, the skill set, the different, what the market is doing in your geography, and also an insight into, what we should be doing as FP&A professional in this day and age of COVID and uncertainty. So thank you very much for that. A great presentation. We're now at a good point where I'd like to invite the members of the panel to give us their key takeaway, a very quick bullet point from their session. So, Matt, if you would like to give us your key conclusion or your key takeaway, please, that'll be good.
Yes, my key takeaway is like, look, how you set up your team and how you kind of play off each other's skills is really important. And then using technology to collaborate across the team really is the key to success. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Irina, your key takeaway, please.
So in order to get ourselves ready, as I mentioned before, we need to ensure that we have those new skills, yeah, and play to those strengths, as Joe said, and again, train ourselves in the new technical skills as well. You know, the ones that traditionally we were trained on, yeah, our foundation, but now there are new technical skills that we also need to build up. You know, we want to get more knowledge perhaps in that data science, in AI, the machine learning, because it is starting to really impact our decision-making process. So certainly the key to ensure that we stay you know, relevant and build up on our skills in order to get ready for that next role that we're after.
Thank you, Irina. Jiao, can we have a quick takeaway from you as well, please?
Yes, so relevant to today's uncertain times, I'll quote the famous philosopher Ralph Emerson, who once shared that life is a journey, not a destination. Building high-performance teams is a journey, which can be highly rewarding. Enjoy the ride.
Thank you very much, Jiao. Can we have a key takeaway from you, Andreas, please?
Yeah, my key takeaway, how important is that we are supporting with technology, and I'm coming from the technology perspective, that we are how important it is to support the different roles in the FP&A team to make it a winning FP&A team. It's interesting to see that, and you saw it here, 85% of our financial skills success is due to skills in human engineering. So I think that is something where we need to take a closer look at.
Thank you very much, Andreas. And finally, Joe, what is your key takeaway?
Yeah, I think the thing that probably stood out the most for me was something that everyone's kind of touched on, which is that we have all these fantastic different kinds of FP&A skills and FP&A professionals, different backgrounds and everything that they can offer. But unless we put them in the right combinations and with the right goals and focuses to work towards, we're not going to get the benefit of that. So it is about the combination of the technical skill and the people skill in order to be able to make that whole thing work.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Joe. And members of the panel, thank you very much for your key takeaway. We are now at a great point in the session, which is towards the end, but more importantly, our Q&A session. I would like to invite Larissa to join us and share with us the question that our esteemed webinar attendees have put through to the panel. So Larissa, over to you.
Thank you, Hans. Thank you, panel. Thank you, participants, for such an interesting session. I would like to remind everyone, please continue to send your questions. Even if we don't have enough time to answer them, we will be able to answer in emails. The first question is to Matt. Matt, you mentioned that there are some new roles in your team, such as architect and data scientist. The question is, do you develop those roles internally, or do you hire those people? And are they typical finance professionals, or are they representatives of different professions?
We have a specific team that we've invested in regarding the data scientists that is really, I mean, we're spending millions of dollars really getting better at data. Now, locally within the FP&A team, we do have a few people that just focus on analyzing the data, and they would just be your traditional FP&A folks. But really building out the data, that's a huge investment on our part. Did I answer your question, Larissa?
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you so much, Matt. The next question is to you, Irena. Can you share typical digital modern FP&A team structure? How it should look like?
The structure, it really depends on what is needed in your organization and the size and the scope. The 5 roles that we outlined are critical to the overall success. Where they're located, it no longer matters. What we are seeing in our organization is the data scientists, analysts are sitting in another country where the business partnering and influencing is happening at a local level. But even that is changing now. We have certain even partnering roles that are located above country, for example, depending on what the business needs and dynamic is. And so there is no one model that fits all. You certainly have to now, with greater flexibility, be able to adjust to what your business needs are and ensure that you have the presence of those roles. But where they're located, where they're structured, is not necessarily one size fits all. I hope that helps answer the question. It's probably not specific, but it does speak to the fact that we do have greater flexibility on how we structure ourselves today because we operate so much more across the globe. And talent is out there. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Irena. Thank you. Excellent answer. Joe, the next question is to you. And it's about your business, FP&A finance business partnering model. So you have one of the leading models in the world in your organization. The question is, what would be your advice to those organizations that are very traditional, and what would be the first steps for them to start to develop finance FP&A business partnering model?
Thank you. That's a great question, Larissa. So thank you. It's not an easy journey to go on, and organizations tend to go much quicker and want to miss important steps in any change initiative. So my words of advice is first the leadership buy-in. It's important that the senior leadership of an organization has the appreciation of the importance of business partnering. Well, you know, in terms of forward-looking support, that's important. Secondly, the capability assessment throughout the organization is critical, because what we saw within Maersk and building the framework that I referred to in my presentation is that if you don't have a clear view on what the gaps are between what you're looking for and what you have, then you're going to miss a lot of the potential on uplifting and upscaling your business partnering capability. And just generally from my transformation and change experience, you know, look externally as well to other organizations that have gone through similar journeys. There's a lot of learnings that you can learn to accelerate your own journey and your own you know, transformation. You don't have to all start from scratch. So I mean, reach out to you know, to your network, to other organizations and leading organizations, and Maersk is one. So there is a lot of information out on the internet that can help you, guide you on that transformation journey.
Thank you so much, Joe. Thank you for sharing your insights here. The next question is to you, Andreas. There are actually 2 questions. The first one is the use of modern collaborative technology a journey rather than a destination? And the next question, which is very similar, how to deal with the ever-changing technology? how to make sure that we're always updated and always current?
Let's start with the second question first. I think it's relevant to choose the right technology. And sometimes it's not so easy to do because you have some legacy systems. There are technologies who can bridge the gaps between these legacy systems, but there are also already technologies on the market today who gives you the full picture of business partnering, of automation, of AI, machine learning, and so on. Just I think selection process is a very vital part of it. And of course, it's a journey. I remember when new technologies coming on board, like AI and machine learning, etc., that is nice to have, but I think you need to make sure you understand the technology and how to use it in your digital transformation process before you can use it really for a significant value. So we have customers using AI and machine learning, and everything was fine until the COVID is coming. Now the model has to be adapted because you cannot work anymore with your 3 years of actual data to do the prediction and to use AI. You have to find new models. So that is new skills are necessary. And of course, it's a journey. It's not so easy to implement immediately, and you need to have the right skill set in the team.
Excellent answer. Thank you so much, Andreas. The next question is to you, Joe. It's a very interesting question, actually. What is the future of FP&A? How do you see it with all of those developments in artificial intelligence, machine learning? Do you see that machines can replace people? This is the first part of this question. And the second one, do you still believe that FP&A person should be a qualified chartered accountant? Thank you.
Second part's definitely interesting. I think where I've probably got more in common with most of you is the first part of the question, where recruitment and FP&A are the two areas that we're all constantly told are going to be replaced by machines, but it hasn't happened yet. I think that it's a fair question, but for me, as we've discussed here, the technology and the data can only give you so much, and you do need the balance with the ability to then actually talk about what that means and talk about practical applications, but also to look for opportunities within all of that information that you're producing. So maybe we'll see teams continue to change shape and size, and perhaps there'll be less people working within teams, but they'll maybe be more highly qualified and more technically skilled people. But I think that's something that's going to happen over a longer period of time. It's not a quick change that's going to just disappear. As we saw from the data before, and as these guys have all mentioned, everyone's looking at investing in their FP&A teams as opposed to replacing them with better computers. So it's about how the technology and the people can complement each other. And in terms of the question about whether or not these people need to be qualified accountants, fair question. And actually, we do find that in particularly slightly more senior FP&A roles, but perhaps ones that are going to be standalone, there's often a desire for someone who is very technically skilled in a specific area and not necessarily needing to be a chartered accountant. As an example, I've been working with an oil and gas business recently who the CFO told me his dream would be to find somebody who started out as a chemical engineer before they became an accountant. And we have managed to hire someone for them who started their career as a chemical engineer, became an accountant, and is now going to be head of planning and reporting for a large oil and gas business. So I don't think that accountancy qualification is crucial, even necessary, but I think we'll still see it being the majority of people.
Thank you so much. Excellent answer. And with this question, I will conclude the Q&A session, but I would like to say thank you so much for all your answers, dear panel. But to those people who ask questions and would like to ask more questions, it's still not too late. As I said, we will be able to answer your questions in offline regime. Thank you so much, and back to you, Hans.
Larissa, thank you very much. And members of the panel, thank you very much for your insightful answers. And attendees, please keep sending your question. And thank you very much for the ones we've put to our members of the panel. Just a couple of points I would like to add to some of the question and some of the answers is that it's not one size fits all. I think the maturity model that we shared and Jiao went through as well is very important for people to set themselves and see where their organization is so that then they can look at, where is the gap and how they fill the gap, and then build the team accordingly. There's no point, having data scientists and big architect when your system is very small, or it's a very minute system, etc. So yeah, it's not one size fits all. So well, thank you very much for that. Let's now quickly move on. We nearing the end of our presentation, so it's a good point to say thank you to our sponsors, Jedox and Michael Page. To say thank you to our esteemed members of the panel for their insight, their presentation, the time and effort they put into today's presentation and work. A big thank you to our attendees, our FP&A board members, for taking the time and spending the time with us today, for giving us their insight via the poll question. And please remember, at the end of the webinar, we've got the feedback session, which is very important for us. You fill that in. The last slide is just to let you know that our upcoming webinar is on FP&A Trends webinar on Xpna. Should be the baseline. It's on the 3rd, so registration is open. Please join us. And remember to stay connected, join our group, stay informed and updated with the latest. With that, I'm going to say again, thank you to absolutely everyone for joining and for giving your insight, members of the panel, sponsors. Hope you have a great morning, afternoon, and evening, and we look forward to meeting you in the next one. Please don't forget our survey. So thank you very much. And with that, I conclude our webinar for today. Thank you very much. Have a great day. Bye-bye.